Welcome to the ProTicker Deep Dive.
Today we are diving into a revolution. And I don't use that word lightly. This isn't science fiction anymore. We're talking about gene editing.
Specifically, the CRISPR-based therapies that are finally moving from, the lab bench to actual commercial reality.
It's a massive inflection point.
It really is. For decades, the whole idea of doctors fixing broken genes was something you'd see in a movie. But then, in 2023, the FDA approved the very first CRISPR-based therapy for sickle cell disease.
And by 2024, patients were actually getting treated. An entire multi-billion-dollar industry was born almost overnight.
And when you say multi-billion, we really need to put a pin in that. Our mission today is to cut through the noise, to separate the real science from the hype.
And to really dig into why some of these companies are thriving, while others, even with brilliant science, are just failing.
So let's start with the market size. Just how big are we talking here? Because these numbers, they really anchor the whole story.
They absolutely do. Based on our source material, the global gene editing market was valued at around $10.77 billion this year in 2025.
Okay, that's already huge.
But that's just the starting line. It's projected to just explode to $40.1 billion by 2034.
That's a compound annual growth rate of what, 13 or 14%? That's not just growth, that's a mega market forming right in front of us.
And that kind of growth potential, it attracts a ton of capital, and with it, a ton of volatility.
Ooh.
Which brings us right to the market leader, CRISPR Therapeutics, ticker CRSP.
Right, CRSP. They're the poster child for this whole revolution. But their recent stock chart really frames the core question for our deep dive today, doesn't it?
It's the perfect example. They had this blistering run, peaked near $78 back in October on all the optimism. But since then, the stock's cooled off a lot. It's settled around $55, $56.
So that's the paradox. You have this world-changing breakthrough, the first ever approved therapy of its kind, and yet the stock pulls back hard. So is this a buying opportunity or is it a warning sign?
That's what we're here to figure out.
Let's start with the macro picture. Why now? This tech has been in labs for decades. What finally lit the fuse?
That is the perfect place to start. For years, gene editing was held back by some really big problems. I mean, you had astronomical cost, unreliable delivery methods.
And the big one, right? The fear of off-target effects.
Exactly. The risk that you'd accidentally edit the wrong part of a patient's DNA. It was too clumsy, and nobody at the FDA knew what to do with it. But in the last few years, we've had this perfect storm of catalysts.
Okay, so what was the first catalyst?
Legitimacy.
Yeah.
And with it, capital. The 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry went to Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier.
The CRISPR pioneer.
Right. And that wasn't just an award. It was a green light for investors. It turbocharged the technology's credibility and just unleashed a flood of capital into the sector.
So the money was there, but you still had the clumsiness problem.
And that's where the second catalyst came in, and it's a game changer. Artificial intelligence. Breakthrough research published in Nature just this past July showed AI designing new, superior CRISPR editors.
Wait, AI is designing them now. How?
By training language models on millions of CRISPR operons, the AI learns the rules and then generates novel editors that are just way more precise than the natural ones. It's a huge tailwind, making the whole process safer.
Better tech, more money. I'm guessing that helped the FDA get on board?
That was the final piece of the puzzle. The FDA started charting clear approval pathways. The bureaucratic fog lifted.
Right.
And underneath all of that, you have this massive unmet medical need. Sickle cell disease alone affects about 100,000 people in the U.S.
Suddenly, it's not just a cool science experiment anymore.
It's a humanitarian and a commercial imperative.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly for CRISPR Therapeutics. Let's talk about execution, because that's where the rubber meets the road. They partnered with Vertex to bring us Casgevy.
And their execution on Casgevy has been phenomenal. It's the first FDA-approved CRISPR therapy for blood disorders, and it puts them at the absolute top of the hierarchy right now.
So for anyone who isn't a biologist, can you walk us through how it works? This is the ex vivo approach, right?
Correct. Ex vivo just means outside the body. Doctors take out a patient's bone marrow stem cells, ship them to a lab, and then the CRISPR machinery edits those cells to fix the sickle cell mutation.
And then they infuse the corrected cells back into the patient.
Exactly. It's essentially a permanent, one-time genetic fix.
Yeah.
And the clinical results have been just miraculous.
I saw that elimination of those vaso-occlusive crises, the horrible pain episodes.
In many cases, a complete elimination, a functional cure.
So the science works. But what about the business side? How's the commercial rollout going?
They're moving fast, largely thanks to that Vertex partnership. By mid-2025, They already activated 75 authorized treatment centers around the world.
And are patients actually getting the treatment?
They are. The numbers are accelerating. As of mid-year, 115 patients had completed the cell collection step, and 29 had already received their infusions. That ramp-up is so important for proving this is a real business.
And the revenue is starting to show up?
Oh, yeah. Q2 2025 revenues jumped over 70% year-over-year to $865 million. And Vertex is guiding for over $100 million in Casgevy revenue for the full year. This is real money in a real market.
Okay, so let's go back to our big question. The science is a cure, the execution is strong, revenue is jumping. Why did the stock drop 30% from its high? This has to be about future fears.
It's all about the massive unknowns. The first big one is long-term safety. The initial data is great, but what happens in 5 years, 10 years, 20? That's a cloud hanging over the whole sector.
The what-ifs of secondary mutations or tumors down the road.
Precisely. The second major hurdle is the price tag.
Right, these therapies aren't cheap. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
And that creates huge reimbursement challenges, especially in Europe. Markets like Germany and France are really slow to approve these expensive new therapies. That puts a hard ceiling on global growth for now.
And the third worry, and this is key for a growth stock, is what's next. Casgevy is amazing, but it's for a relatively niche market. Investors want to see more.
And that leads to the most exciting part of their pipeline, CTX310. It's for cardiovascular disease.
A much, much bigger market.
Orders of magnitude bigger. Preliminary data showed an 82% reduction in triglycerides and an 86% cut in LDL cholesterol. It's staggering.
If that holds up, you're talking about a market of tens of millions of people. But here's the friction point. They'd almost certainly need an in vivo approach for that, right? Editing inside the body.
That's an excellent point. It's a huge leap in complexity, from the controlled environment of a lab to the chaos of the human body. The delivery mechanism is infinitely harder, but the potential reward is so massive, the market is willing to take that risk for now.
Okay, let's pivot to the competition. In every tech boom, you have the pioneer, and then you have the companies trying to build a better mousetrap.
And that brings us to Beam Therapeutics, ticker BEAM. They represent that next technological leap. They use something called base editing.
So what's the difference between standard CRISPR and base editing?
It's all about precision. Standard CRISPR, it makes a double-strand break in the DNA. It cuts both sides of the ladder. The cell has to repair that, and sometimes the repair is sloppy.
Leading to those off-target effects we talked about.
Exactly. Base editing is way more surgical. It directly converts one DNA letter to another, like changing a C to a T without ever cutting both strands.
So it's like using the find and replace function in a Word doc instead of scissors and tape.
That's a perfect analogy. It's theoretically much safer. Their lead programs are BE101 for sickle cell and BE201 for blood cancers. We're expecting key data in the next 12 to 18 months.
So they're chasing CRSP in the same market, but with a tool that could be better.
That's the bet. But until we see that clinical data, it's just a theory. BEAM is a higher risk, more speculative play right now.
All right, now let's talk about the cautionary tale in this space. Editas Medicine, ticker EDET. They were pioneers, but the stock is trading under $4. What on earth happened?
Editas is proof of a brutal truth in biotech. The best science doesn't always win. Their failure was strategic.
What was the misstep?
They went after an ultra-rare disease first, a type of blindness called LCA10, a noble goal, but it only affects a few hundred people in the entire world.
A tiny addressable market. Commercially, that's a dead end for a high-cost therapy.
It was a death sentence.
Oh.
Their execution stumbled, the reimbursement was a nightmare, and then they had an unexpected adverse event in a trial which raised safety flags at the worst possible time.
So they just didn't have the scale or the smarts that CRSP did with their Vertex partnership and their focus on a larger market.
That's the takeaway. CRSP won with smart partnerships and disciplined execution. Editas shows that scientific brilliance is worthless without a viable commercial strategy.
So let's synthesize this for everyone listening. Looking forward, what are the biggest things to watch? Let's start with the bull case. What could send CRSP flying again?
The number one catalyst is CTX310. If they show success in cardiovascular disease, the entire thesis changes. The market explodes.
And geographic expansion has to be on the list.
Absolutely. Getting Casgevy approved in places like China or Japan would be a huge revenue driver. And don't forget that AI tailwind. Better, safer editors will lift all boats.
Okay, now the bear case. What are the big risks?
The risks are structural. Number one is still that long-term safety data. Any bad news there could crush the entire sector.
And the reimbursement problem isn't going away.
No, it's a huge barrier. Germany's regulators are basically saying, show us 5 years of clean safety data before we'll pay for Cascafé. That kind of resistance is a real problem.
And finally, there's always the threat of being leapfrogged by new technology.
You have to watch two things. One, CRSP's core patents start expiring around 2029. And two, companies like Intellia are working hard on in vivo therapies. If they crack that nut, it could make CRSP's ex vivo approach look outdated.
Okay, let's tie this all back to the stock chart. For our market-savvy listeners, what does that pullback from $78 to $55 actually tell us?
Well, from a technical perspective, the correction is actually pretty healthy. The stock ran up 185% from its low. The move from $78 down to $55 is classic profit-taking. We see it as corrective consolidation inside a bigger uptrend.
So for our listeners, what does corrective consolidation mean in plain English?
It means the stock is just digesting its big gains. It's building a new base of support before the next move higher. We saw really strong support come in right around that $50 to $52 range.
So that $50 mark is the line in the sand.
Absolutely. A break below $50 would be a major red flag. But the volume has been cooling off, and the RSI, that's a momentum indicator, is moving into a more neutral range. It suggests the heavy selling is probably over.
A breather, not a collapse.
Exactly. It looks like institutional confidence is still there for the long term. The next big test on the upside is breaking through resistance in that $65 to $70 area.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up. Gene editing is real. It's a long-term growth market. CRISPR Therapeutics has the lead, and this pullback makes for a much more interesting entry point.
For sure. Beam is the high-risk, high-reward bet on better technology. And Adidas, well, it's a painful reminder that execution trumps everything. It's a value trap.
The technology's moving so fast. We've talked about AI, clinical cures, and all this friction over pricing. So here's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with. How quickly will regulators address the huge ethical questions here, specifically about inheritable gene editing, before the science just becomes too widespread to control? The tech is ready. Is our governance?
That gap between what's possible and what's permissible, that's the defining question of our time. See you all in the next Pro Ticker Deep Dive.